tonight, and I would like to welcome you all on behalf of the Center for Kurdish Progress. My name is Rosa Burç. I am one of the coordinators of the Center for Kurdish Progress. I was born in Germany to a Kurdish Armenian family, and I am currently finishing my postgraduate studies in international politics at SOAS. Today, I am joined by my colleague Kılat Özcan, and as Kurds, we feel that the existence of an organization like the Center for Kurdish Progress is significant to contributing to our understanding of the Kurds and Kurdistan. Our first event today marks the assassination of Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou and has been organized in partnership with Malut Swara of the Kurdistan Democratic Party. Thank you. At this occasion, thank you. In relation to that, our speakers today are going to talk about the Kurdish struggle in Rojalat, also known as East Kurdistan. And before welcoming our speakers, I would like to thank Keith Bass from the Labour Party for hosting this event today. And now I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Asso Hassan Zadeh. He is the member of the Kurdistan Democratic Party Central Committee. And our second speaker, the former French consul in Erbil, Dr. Frédéric Tissot. And our third speaker, Ms. Latifa Perry, on behalf of Louise Ayola, the Secretary General of the Socialist International. So I would like to give the floor to our first speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be in this prestigious place to speak about Dr. Ghassemlou and the struggle of Kurds in Iran. I thank the British Parliament for hosting this noble event. We are gathered here again to celebrate the memory of Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou, who was assassinated 25 years ago by the very people who were supposed to discuss with him on behalf of the Islamic Republic of Iran a political solution to the Kurdish issue in Iran. Dr. Ghassemlou's memory deserves to be honored continuously. We owe him a lot. He devoted his entire life to the freedom of Kurdish people and did everything to make this cause known in much more difficult times in which Kurds were repressed and their rights denied even more seriously, times in which the international community was barely conscious of the plight and even the existence of our people. So this event to commemorate Dr. Ghassemlou is an act of gratitude to him. At the same time, his example and his ideas must continue to guide our path in the struggle we are carrying out for the freedom of our people and democracy in our country. That is why Ghassemlou's commemoration is not only a symbolic act of remembrance. For us, Iranian Kurds, suffering from the persistent grip on our country by Ghassemlou's murderers, and from still unfavorable political and international geopolitical situation and circumstances, this commemoration is also a political action. If Ghassemlou is still so present in the political mind and the collective memory of Kurds in Iran, it's not only because of his charisma or his truly exceptional and multifaceted personality. It is above all because Ghassemlou's story is a living and continuing story. Ghassemlou impregnated the cause of Kurds in Iran with a number of features that made it more than a cause for their national rights. He embodied the very antithesis of the philosophy of governance of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This irreconcilable contradiction and the effectiveness of Ghassemlou's struggle led the Iranian regime to include Ghassemlou as a main target on the list of Iranian opponents to be eliminated. It is precisely with the assassination of Dr. Ghassemlou that the Iranian regime began its new wave of killing of opponents abroad in the aftermath of Iran-Iraq war. In a Middle East torn by polarizations, unfortunately current events, the Syrian crisis and what is taking place right now in Iraq proves it once more. Ghassemlou embodied some sort of rationality and proper balance. While being himself a product of the complexities of his society and his time, he wanted to be a conciliator of tensions and contradictions surrounding the Kurdish issue and the question of democracy in the region. Ghassemlou was a man of action with rare courage and a great sense of initiative and risk-taking. Whether during his early academic life or later political career, his courageous positions often put him in difficult situations, but he always preferred this option rather than deny his own principles. The most important principle for him was political independence. He would never accept support or alliances that would make him lose his political independence. Ghassemlou deeply believed in the right to self-determination of the Kurdish people, going so far as to say that if one day the Kurds were to establish an independent state encompassing all Kurds, this would not constitute secession, but reunification. However, his knowledge of the complexity of the Kurdish issue and the geopolitical reality of his time led him to strive for the national rights of the Kurdish people within a democratic Iran. Yet, inscribing his struggle within the framework of Iran did not make him indifferent to natural relations of solidarity that should exist between Kurds of different countries. He believed that the Kurdish movement in every part of Kurdistan should care about the interests of other Kurds in other parts of Kurdistan, especially in the context of the relations with governments of countries where those other Kurds live. Despite his strong convictions and clear principles, Ghassemlou was nonetheless a pragmatic politician who refused to submit himself to the dictates of dogma. While he was a deeply secular man, following the 1979 revolution, the Iranian Revolution, even after boycotting the referendum on the Islamic Republic, he was elected as the only lay representative to the first Constituent Assembly, called the Assembly of Experts. Iranian KDP candidates were also elected in the first parliamentary elections. However, we know that the new regime invalidated their election, and Ghassemlou himself never attended the meetings of the Assembly of Experts because of threats against his life by Ayatollah Khomeini himself. Ghassemlou always preferred political and peaceful solutions. Even after Khomeini issued the fatwa to attack Iranian Kurdistan, Dr. Ghassemlou agreed to begin negotiations with a regime he considered anachronistic. He did this once again at the end of the Iran-Iraq war, but it turned out that the first negotiations were a tactic by the regime to buy time to regain control of Kurdish areas, and the second negotiations was a trap to kill Dr. Ghassemlou. Political morality so dear to Dr. Ghassemlou also applied internationally. While the world he came from and in which he had studied was at that time dominated by communist ideology, he did not hesitate to take a stand against Soviet intervention in Czechoslovakia in 1968, nor did he hesitate to condemn the taking of hostages at the US Embassy in Tehran in 1979. Given the anti-imperialist climate then, these stands were simply outstanding. Later in the 1980s, while leading an armed resistance against the Iranian regime, he introduced democratic socialism in his party's program. His goal was to distance himself and his party from the existing socialism for its lack of democracy, but also to better justify and facilitate the support he was seeking from the West. Dr. Ghassemlou was the Kurdish leader who most contributed to internationalizing the Kurdish question at a time when the outside world showed very little interest in the Kurdish cause. He thought that Kurds could not afford to base their external relations on purely ideological criteria. Hence, he developed friendly relations with European Social Democrats, most of whom remained very impressed by his extraordinary personality and vision. It is sad, and Dr. Frédéric Tissot here can confirm this, that despite the just and progressive character of Ghassemlou's struggle, the attention and support obtained by him was only humanitarian. Of course, humanitarian assistance to our people at those difficult times was very valuable, and Kurds, especially Iranian Kurds, are very grateful to people like Dr. Frédéric Tissot for all they did then. While being a revolutionary and a charismatic leader, Ghassemlou was passionate about life, a great humanist and a true democrat. He was opposed to the cult of personality and could live in harsh conditions like his Peshmergas. He believed that the struggle for the national rights of Kurdish people must not neglect the ideals of social justice and equality, especially equality between men and women. And because we were fighting against a ferocious regime that respected nothing, neither its own precepts nor the international law, should not cause us to violate our own values regarding human dignity, particularly in the humanitarian field. Thus, he taught his Peshmergas to treat prisoners well, to release them systematically, and to refrain from resorting to terrorist methods, even if he knew that it would cause a lack of interest from the world media. Dear friends, if I said that Ghassemlou's story is a continuous one, it's also because it represents for us an open wound. Open because we do not only decry a crime that has deprived us of an exceptional leader under inhuman circumstances by abusing his good faith. We are also outraged, even today, by the scandal and injustice committed by the Austrian government, which not only freed 2 of the murderers, but also escorted one to the Iran Air flight at the Vienna airport. There has been no justice no judiciary pursuits have followed this crime. Fortunately, the economic and security blackmails to which the Austrian government surrendered could not prevent the German courts to declare in 1997, during the Mykonos trial on the assassination of Ghassemlou's successor, Zadeh Sharafkendi, that the highest leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran were responsible for the terror machine set up to eliminate its opponents abroad. Today, how can we accept that the international community continues to turn a blind eye to the fate of the Kurds of Iran, whose basic rights are still flagrantly and systematically violated? How can we accept that the whole question of human rights and democracy in Iran is still neglected and overshadowed by dealings between the Iranian regime and the international community around security issues like the Middle East process, the nuclear problem, and now the Syrian and Iraqi crisis? Sooner or later, the Austrian government and relevant European institutions will have to admit that to allow the reinstatement of Ghassemlou's murder case is not only fair and moral, but also politically productive. Sooner or later, international powers will have to face the fact that there will be no lasting and genuine international peace and harmony on which national security and even economic interests of those powers depend, unless we have in our region domestically responsible governments who first respect the rights of their own citizens. Dear friends, the Middle East is in turmoil more than ever. Despite the cruelty never seen before and different threats around us, new windows seem to be opening on the Kurdish question. I wonder if Ghassemlou wasn't ahead of his time, or if history missed its date with him. Allow me to hope that his memory and teachings enlighten us all as we tread towards the realization of the legitimate rights of the Kurdish people, and also in the long and difficult path to peace and democracy in our region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Zadeh, for portraying Ghassemlou's significance to the Kurdish struggle in Iran. Now I would like to pass on to Dr. Frédéric Tissot, who is the former French consul in Erbil, and his speech is going to be translated from French into English by Mr. Zadeh himself. So, thank you.
I know that I'm not the best qualified to translate from French into English, but it seems that there is no one else here who is as fluent as me in French and whose English is better than mine. No, she refused to do so.
You are the best.
So no choice.
Mesdames, Messieurs, chers amis,
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends,
je vais lire pour une fois mon discours.
It's the only time in my life that I'm going to read my speech.
I remember every time in Erbil.
Dis-le en
En anglais. Je suis extrêmement heureux et très ému d'être ici aujourd'hui au lendemain de l'anniversaire de l'assassinat de celui que j'appelle mon maître.
I'm very happy and excited to be here today, on a day after the anniversary of the murder of a man who I used to call my teacher.
Le docteur Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou, assassiné, comme tout le monde le sait, par le régime iranien il y a 25 ans.
Dr. Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou, murdered, as everyone knows, by the Iranian regime 25 years ago.
Plusieurs commémorations, cérémonies ont eu lieu au cimetière du Père-Lachaise à cette occasion.
On this occasion, many ceremonies, many celebrations took place at the Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris.
Nous étions réunis également le 21 juin à l'Assemblée nationale française pour lui rendre hommage.
On June 29, we had also a meeting in the French Parliament on the same occasion to pay him tribute, to pay tribute to Ghassemlou.
Personne n'a oublié le docteur Ghassemlou.
Nobody has forgotten Dr. Ghassemlou.
Personne ne peut l'oublier.
Nobody can forget him.
Tous ceux qui l'ont connu savent combien son intelligence et sa vision du monde portaient l'espoir.
All those who knew him know how much his vision and his mind was source of hope.
Il n'était pas de ceux pour qui la politique était juste d'obtenir un poste de prestige ou de pouvoir.
He was not a man who looked at the politics as a way only to get a position or to be in the power. Yeah.
Ce qui était vraiment pour lui la base de son militantisme, c'était ses convictions. Et vraiment aller au bout de ses convictions. Aller au bout de ce que l'histoire devait réaliser, dans le bon sens du terme.
The basis of his political career or political activism was really his beliefs, his convictions, and go after what the history required from him and what should be done really for his people, for example.
J'ai eu de la chance de le connaître en février 1981.
I was lucky, I had the chance of meeting him in 1981, February 1981.
Dans son souterrain protégé des bombardements du régime, dans son bureau politique, que l'on appelait le Daftari Siyasi.
We met in Daftari Siyasi, the Politburo of his party, in underground, a place which was built especially to protect him from the bombing of Iranian regime.
Il était totalement au service de la cause kurde, de cette histoire kurde, et il allait jusqu'au bout.
He was totally at the service of his cause, of his people, of the cause of Kurdish people.
Comment réussir à obtenir la paix sans négocier avec l'ennemi? Cette éternelle question.
The eternal question that he had to resolve or to answer was how to achieve peace without negotiating with his enemy. It's not possible.
Certains lui reprochent encore aujourd'hui d'être allé jusqu'au bout, d'avoir négocié lui-même directement avec l'ennemi et d'en payer de sa vie.
Even today, many people blame Dr. Ghassemlou for the fact that he went until the end of his logic, that he met with his enemy himself. He went to negotiate with him directly, and he was even ready to take the risk of paying this by his life.
Qui pourrait lui reprocher d'être allé jusqu'au bout?
Who could blame him for this?
De s'engager jusqu'au bout.
Okay.
J'aimais cet homme comme on peut aimer un homme de bien.
I loved this man as we can love a good man,
Un homme honnête,
honest,
un homme qui, et il le disait suffisamment à l'époque, qui refusait le terrorisme pour faire reconnaître sa cause, la cause du peuple kurde.
a man who used to say and who refused to resort to terrorism in order to make known his cause, the cause of the Kurdish people.
Il souhaitait tout simplement pouvoir exister au sein d'un Iran démocratique, comme dans le monde entier, pouvoir être respecté et faire en sorte que la culture kurde puisse se développer, transmettre à ses enfants sa propre langue, ses propres coutumes, sa propre culture.
The only thing that he wanted was to exist within a democratic Iran, which is possible in other countries in the world. He wanted to be respected, his people being respected within a democratic Iran, in conditions that ensure his people to develop his culture, to transmit to their children their own language and their own customs, their own traditions. Okay.
Eh bien non, ce n'était pas possible à l'époque. Et cela n'est malheureusement toujours pas possible que les droits des Kurdes puissent être reconnus et respectés.
Unfortunately, it turned out that it was not possible at that time in Iran, and it is still not possible to see the rights of Kurdish people recognized and respected within a democratic Iran.
J'ai vraiment aimé le docteur Ghassemlou, je le dis 2 fois.
I want to repeat that I really loved Dr. Ghassemlou.
C'était mon maître,
He was my teacher, my master,
Mamosta.
my mamosta.
Il connaissait si bien sa région, son peuple, les différentes contraintes géopolitiques, la division et les séparations internes de ce peuple kurde.
He knew so well his region, the region, his people, different geopolitical constraints, the division, internal divisions among the Kurdish people,
De ces peuples kurdes sur ces différents pays.
of those Kurds who are divided among different countries.
Comment, depuis la République de Mahabad, l'espace politique s'était parfois ouvert et souvent définitivement fermé.
He explained me how, since the Republic of Kurdistan in Mahabad, the political space was sometimes open and sometimes definitely closed.
Il m'a enseigné tout cela.
He taught me all that.
Nous étions médecins et nous tenions, comme Dr Ghassemlou, souhaitait apporter quelques soins et quelques réconforts à la population civile, puisqu'il n'y avait plus de services de santé à l'époque.
I was a doctor, we were doctors, French doctors, and we wanted, as Ghassemlou asked us, to provide the Iranian Kurdish people with some humanitarian or medical assistance, as at that time no health care existed in Iranian Kurdistan.
Nous sommes ici pour pouvoir rendre hommage au Dr Ghassemlou avec nos amis kurdes de Londres et de Grande-Bretagne et avec nos amis anglais qui défendent, je le sais, la cause kurde. Et j'en vois plusieurs ici.
I'm here to pay tribute to Dr. Ghassemlou with our Kurdish friends from London and from our British friends whom I know that they defend the Kurdish cause, and I see many of them here.
Je félicite le Parlement britannique d'avoir reconnu le génocide kurde. cet horrible bombardement chimique d'Al-Abja en mars 88.
I congratulate the British Parliament for recognizing the Kurdish genocide, these terrible chemical bombings which happened in Halabja.
Nous parlons d'Irak.
We are talking about Iraq.
Je viens de passer 5 ans comme consul général de France à Erbil.
I spent 5 years in Erbil as General Consul of France.
C'était la continuité d'une histoire kurde débutée 30 ans avant avec le docteur Ghassemlou.
It was the continuation of a Kurdish adventure, a Kurdish story for me that I started with Dr. Ghassemlou.
A story for me and for France, because the starting was with Dr. Ghassemlou. Excuse me, my Kurdish language is... It's not difficult to have some applause. Hein? Je ne peux m'empêcher aujourd'hui d'évoquer la situation du Kurdistan d'Irak.
Of course, today I would like to evoke the current situation in Iraqi Kurdistan as well.
C'est le Kurdistan aussi, en Irak.
It's also Kurdistan in Iraq.
Imaginez quelle discussion nous aurions pu avoir avec le docteur Ghassemlou sur la situation actuelle.
Imagine what discussions would we have today with Ghassemlou if he was alive.
Bien sûr, je ne sais pas et je ne veux rien lui faire dire.
Of course, I don't know and I don't want to make him say what he would say today. I don't want to speak at in his place.
Mais ce que je peux dire à mes amis d'Irak, à mes amis kurdes d'Irak, c'est que l'histoire ne se répète pas.
But what I can say, especially to our friends, Kurdish friends from Iraq, that the history never repeats itself.
Sauf pour les mauvaises choses.
Except in its bad things,
Elle
except
se
for the
répète
mistakes.
lorsque l'espoir est là, lorsqu'une fenêtre est ouverte comme aujourd'hui. Certes, il ne faut pas s'y précipiter.
But when the hope is there, when a new window seems to be opening on the Kurds, on an issue, it's better not to rush on it immediately.
Mais il faut la laisser ouverte.
But we must leave it open.
Et il faut faire en sorte de passer de l'autre côté, de voir effectivement ce qu'il y a ailleurs, ce qu'il y a d'autre.
And we must try to get through the window and to try to see what's on the other side.
Cette image d'une fenêtre ouverte, actuellement, c'est exactement la situation du Kurdistan irakien.
This image of an open window, currently for me, it's an image that represents exactly the Iraqi Kurdistan situation.
Nous connaissons l'histoire de l'Irak.
We know the history of Iraq,
Le dépeçage de l'Empire ottoman réalisé par la France et la Grande-Bretagne en 1916.
the collapse of Ottoman Empire, which was realized by France and Great Britain in 1916.
It was a collapse. It's dépeçage in French, but it's very difficult to translate.
Dismemberment.
Collapse. Collapse. Nous connaissons le sort réservé par les chancelleries occidentales au peuple kurde dans son ensemble et au peuple kurde d'Irak en particulier.
We know what fate was waiting for the Kurdish people because of those events at that time, especially for the Iraqi Kurds.
The work of foreign diplomacy at this time. I think they did not think about the people. They think only about their interest. La répression terrible de Bagdad, la non-reconnaissance de l'existence d'un peuple habitant l'Irak.
The terrible repression coming from Baghdad and the non-recognition of the very existence of a people, of a nation within Iraq.
L'Irak n'est pas un pays arabe.
Iraq is not an Arab country. It's not only made up of Arabs.
Il est un pays devant protéger plusieurs nations, différentes cultures.
It was a country where different nations and cultures lived, and the Iraqi government was supposed to protect all of them.
Il suppose, tiens. Et les nations d'Irak s'expriment aujourd'hui de manière brutale.
But today we see that some of those nations, some of those cultures within Iraq express themselves brutally.
Je pense pour ma part, aujourd'hui, que le peuple kurde doit accéder à l'indépendance.
Personally, I think that today, now it's time for the Kurdish people in Iraq to exercise his right of self-determination, his right to independence according to international laws, the United Nations Charter.
Je dis cela car j'espère que ce ne sont pas les rivalités entre les différents partis politiques kurdes d'Irak qui empêcheront d'accéder à l'indépendance.
And by saying this, I would like to say I wish that different political parties in Iraqi Kurdistan will be able to overcome their differences and not preventing by themselves their people to accede to independence.
Of course, there are different idea between different political parties, but please, the story is here, is now. It's not tomorrow or after tomorrow. And the political party of Kurdistan, Iraq, have to be unified. United. Pensez-vous que le docteur Ghassemlou, pour des raisons géostratégiques, se serait opposé à cette espérance, à cet espoir?
Do you think that today Dr. Ghassemlou, for geopolitical reasons, would oppose this hope to be realized?
This hope?
Yeah.
Pour ma part, je ne le crois pas.
Personally, I don't think so.
Voici juste les quelques mots que je voulais partager avec vous.
Here was some words that I wanted to share with you, some thoughts that I wanted to share with you.
Je remercie bien sûr ceux qui ont organisé cette cérémonie et qui m'ont invité pour partager cette émotion et cet hommage à Ghassemlou.
I thank, of course, people who organized this event and invited me to share with you my emotions and to pay tribute to Ghassemlou today.
A last word, please. I hope next year in Père Lachaise only one ceremony will be organized. Before yesterday, one ceremony of SB Democrat of Kurdistan of Iran, one. Yesterday, in Père Lachaise, another ceremony organized by SB Democrat Kurdistan Iran Second. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I know it's not your...
My fault.
Thank you, Monsieur Tissot, for highlighting the challenges Dr. Ghassemlou was facing in the struggle for a democratic Iran and Kurdistan, and also thank you for sharing your personal memories with us. Merci. I would now like to pass to Ms. Latifa Perry. She is here on behalf of Luis Ayola, the General Secretary of the Socialist International.
Thank you, Rosa. I'm here on behalf of the Secretary General, as Rosa has said, of the Socialist International, Luis Ayala, who unfortunately was unable to be here to convey this message personally as he would have wished. The cause of rights and freedoms for the Kurdish people has been one which has been very close to his heart for many, many years. So he would very much regret not being here tonight. Dear friends, yesterday, July 13, marked the 25th anniversary of the assassination in Vienna of Dr. Abdul Rahman Ghassemlou, the Secretary General of the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan, along with his comrade Abdullah Ghaderi Azar and Iraqi professor Fadil Rasool. 3 weeks before, Dr. Ghassemlou had headed the PDKI's delegation to the 18th Congress of the Socialist International, which brought together leaders and representatives of social democratic, socialist and labour parties from different parts of the world, held in Stockholm. His vision, commitment and dedication to the cause of the Kurdish people, and indeed for democracy and human rights in Iran, was well known to our progressive movement. He was a man highly respected, who through his efforts and courage made the struggle of the Kurdish people for rights and freedoms a common cause with that of the quest for democracy and for the rights and the freedoms of all people. Many of those who during that time were living the democratic revolutions which ushered in a new era for the peoples of Central and Eastern Europe, or those living the struggles for democracy in other parts of the world, like Latin America, Africa, and in Asia, came into contact and got to know better the reality, the hopes and aspirations of the Kurdish people in their various countries through the efforts of leaders such as Dr. Ghassemlou, and others such as his successor as Secretary General of the party, Dr. Sharafkandi, later also tragically assassinated on 17 September 1992, following his participation at the 19th Congress of the Socialist International in Berlin. We in the Socialist International know well from our own experiences and struggles around the world that it would not be possible to build a society of rights for all people if there is no recognition of all the diverse groups within society, with guarantees of equal rights for all citizens. We know from our experiences that the common way forward for democracy to flourish and for peace to be achieved is the respect of all freedoms for all groups. Without guarantees of equal rights for all, space is created for sectarian divisions and extremism to grow. As we can see today, in many conflicts that affect countries in different parts of the world, it is always innocent people who suffer the results of these divisions. That is why, in our international, parties such as the KDP have their place, as we recognize that the Kurdish people have to be granted their rightful voice in the decisions which affect the future of their country. That is why we stand alongside the Kurdish people and all the Democrats who are today seeking a future of peace and freedom in Iran. For the same reason, we have firmly rejected the creation of an Islamic caliphate in Iraq and called for a government of national unity with guarantees of pluralism based on equal rights for all citizens, including, of course, the Kurdish people. With those same principles and values in mind, we are standing today alongside the Kurds, as indeed all groups who are suffering in Syria, mobilized in the struggle for freedom and democracy. Solidarity is an expression of our identity and has always guided our proposals and policies. It directs us in our fight for equality and in our struggles against all forms of discrimination and oppression. For the members of the Socialist International, Dr. Ghassemlou's legacy is a key component on the road to advancing today's efforts to strengthen and consolidate the voice of the Kurdish people in his native country as everywhere. The work that he set out to do is not yet accomplished, and our International will continue to denounce all forms of repression against the Kurds and to support multilateral efforts to advance and protect, in accordance with international law, the rights, security and improvement of the living conditions of the Kurdish people, all of which Dr. Ghassemlou represented and represents today. Luis Ayala.
Thank you for delivering Mr. Ayala's message. Our fourth speaker, Chairman Corbyn, has not arrived yet. Therefore, I think we can open the floor for discussion. And so I would like to ask the audience if some of you have a question. Yes, please.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the organizer who organized this event on remembrance of Dr. Ghassemlou. Dr. Ghassemlou is a man of courage, brave man who sacrificed himself for his people. His hope was to achieve a free society, a free Kurdish society within Iran, a society with dignity and with democratic rights. But his hope never been achieved, and he sacrificed himself for that hope. My question to the speakers is, will we be able to see that a free society, Kurdish society, within democratic Iran in the future?
Yes. Who would like to? Mr. Corbyn has arrived. Let's answer this question and then we can continue. Who would like to give an answer? Maybe.
Of course, as I said in my speech, the path of democracy and freedom, the rights of our people is a long way, and it's not difficult, not easy task. What is important to point out is this situation in each part of Kurdistan is peculiar. It's not the same. Neither the demographic balance nor the political or historical links or the legal or political status of Kurds in each part of Kurdistan is the same. So while fortunately we see Iraqi Kurds very close to realizing the national rights in its extreme kind, I mean independence, we still in Iran believe in continuing our struggle. Within the framework of Iran, we fight for a federal, democratic and pluralistic Iran. It's unfortunate to see that the the stances and positions, political positions that we see today in the Iranian opposition, it's not at all what we can expect, and it's not source of hope for us. But we have to continue our work, to continue dialogue with progressive forces. Many things changed today, so it's not easy to predict exactly what will be happening and what will be the exact, the precise impact of the situation, especially in Iraqi Kurdistan, on other parts of Kurdistan, I mean especially in Iran. But in any way, we should keep realistic and optimistic, as Dr. Ghassemlou used to be so.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I would just like to pass on to you, Mr. Corbyn.
Thank you very much, friends, for inviting me along. I'm sorry I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting. We've got a meeting of Third World Solidarity in the next door room, where we're paying tribute to one of our late and great friends, the late Tony Benn. And when you were summoning me in here, I was actually in the middle of my speech at the time, so I couldn't take the call then. But anyway, I'm here now. I apologise for that, and I'm sure you'd understand. Basically, the two meetings ought to be merged, actually, which I think would be appropriate. But nevertheless, we are here now. Thank you for bringing me along here. And thank you for remembering Dr. Ghassemlou and his death in 1989. I remember it very well. And I remember many speeches Stan Newens and others made about him and his life, and the appalling way he was treated, the way he was killed, and the way he was killed by deception when he was so obviously campaigning for justice for the Kurdish people and peace for the Kurdish people. Let us never forget those that laid down their lives that others might live in peace and justice, and he is one of many that have laid down their lives in that way. I also welcome very much the formation of Kurdish Progress and what we're discussing here tonight. And there are many in this room who I've known for many years who have fought a very brilliant and very effective campaign for Kurdish people and their rights. And if we look at it in the broad historical sweep, Kurdish people are an obvious identity, an obvious language, an obvious culture, and a very advanced and progressive language and progressive culture with deep traditions of both oral history, artistic achievement, and survival in often a very harsh environment. And the end of the First World War, which we're now commemorating apparently in this country, the leaders of the countries that called themselves the victors of the First World War, in reality there's no victors of wars. Everyone's a loser in some way in wars, because we lose people, we lose so many other things. Those people sat round in the drawing rooms in the Palace of Versailles and drew lines on maps. One who had a perhaps slightly better vision than many others was President Woodrow Wilson of the United States, who at least recognized that the subject peoples of all the empires, the Ottoman as well as all the other empires, had rights at the end of the First World War. Unfortunately, this wasn't translated into independence for all those people that had asserted those rights against empire, be it the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the British Empire, or the Ottoman Empire. Instead, it was translated into mandate territories and big power politics. And so whilst initially the rights of the Kurdish people were recognized, there was a brief period when there was a Kurdish state at the end of the First World War. The big power politics took over. The need for the Soviet Union to have a buffer state, as it saw it, the need for the West to stand up against the Soviet Union as it saw it, and the creation of modern Turkey, modern Iraq, and those lines on maps that are still the cause of so many problems today. And thus the Kurdish people's rights were snuffed out in 1923, apparently. The British role in all this was not always a good one. The British took part in the oppression of Kurdish people. At that time, the use of chemical weapons, the use of bombardment. There were some awful things done. Don't worry, it's house adjourning. And I always think of that whenever I see Churchill's statue outside in Parliament Square. Yes, he was a very interesting and very effective Second World War leader, but he was also the leader of a deep oppression of the Kurdish people at that time. Kurdish language was oppressed and suppressed. The Kurdish people were oppressed and suppressed. The language was banned in Turkey. The oppression was deep in all the other countries. And as MP for an inner city area, such as I represent Islington North, where we are home to people from all countries and those that sadly have no country but have a name. And when considerable numbers of Kurdish people came for two reasons. One was the use of chemical weaponry by Saddam Hussein and his government in Halabja, and also, of course, the terrible treatment of Kurdish people in Marash in Turkey shortly after that. And therefore, I've been involved with Kurdish people and their causes all the time for the last 30 years that I've been a Member of Parliament. And a number of things have struck me. One is the sheer determination of Kurdish people to survive and ensure their language is preserved, and the bravery of many, particularly in Turkey, where there's been denunciation of Kurdish people as mountain Turks. The language has been banned, people have been imprisoned for that language, and have made such enormous progress. And enormous progress has been made with the establishment of the Kurdish regional government and with the Kurdish movement in all those countries. Ghassemlou died because he stood up for the Kurdish people. And we are now at a position where at least the world tends to know about Kurdish people in a way they never did before. And people begin to understand the history a bit more than ever before. And I want to see a time when there is an area of the world that I can see is Kurdish and is Kurdistan. What I would also say is nationalism, internationalism, human rights and respect for others are not necessarily all opposites. And I hope that a Kurdish community, the Kurdish state, that has given such great support and had such great support from others, will also be as strong in defending the human rights and improving the condition of everybody within the frontiers of those areas. What happened against the Kurdish people in Halabja was a war crime, was a disgrace against humanity. Those that have been killed in the mountains in Turkey and imprisoned in Turkey, likewise. Those that have been attacked in Syria and attacked in Iran, likewise. So the Kurdish people have achieved so much recognition around the world and such a great sense of solidarity. I hope that that community goes from strength to strength. And in memory of great people like Ghassemlou, we have the fundamental principles of respect of the human rights of all, respect of the rights of women and their treatment within society, respect of young people, and respect for religious and cultural and social diversity within our society. Nothing weakens a society more than discrimination. Nothing strengthens a society more than tackling discrimination and giving everybody an opportunity to contribute and survive. We are in very difficult times within the whole Middle Eastern region. Today, we heard about the renewed collective punishment of the Palestinian people by Israel's bombing of Gaza, and I raised with the Foreign Secretary the concept that if Israel is meting out collective punishment against the Palestinian people, then consequences follow. Sanctions against Israel, I think, should follow as a result of that. Likewise, as we called for sanctions against Iraq in 1988 for Halabja and the treatment of Kurdish people. Human rights abuses should be met not with a military response, but a response that teaches people the value of human rights, society and justice. So tonight we remember a great man who laid down his life that others might live, who laid down his life for the Kurdish people. Tonight We applaud all those that have fought for so long for the identity, the cultural identity and the strength of the Kurdish community. And I thank all those, and I know many in this room, that have spent so many years campaigning for those rights and brought such strength and cultural diversity to London and to community life in London. So when we remember people, we remember them with a purpose and remember them to go forward to learn the lesson from their lives, that others may not suffer the same fate that they suffered, but that the brilliance of the music, the art, the culture, and the sheer sense of survival is something we pass on to all those future generations. Thank you very much indeed.
Especially bearing in mind your tight schedule. Thank you.
My schedule is always tight.
Okay. And also thank you for bringing in the international dimension to the history of the Kurdish struggle. I think we can continue the question and answer session. Is there anyone who would like to start? Yes, please.
I thank the organizer for remembering Ghassemlou and Dr. Rahman and all those who fought for Kurdish rights. My question is to Mr. Jerry. You see the Kurdish people as one. Do you think the Kurdish people share the same one? Also, your parliamentary colleagues, do they share the same?
I've always been reluctant to speak on behalf of all my parliamentary colleagues. I don't always feel in a totally strong position to do that. I remember raising the Kurdish issue with my good friend Yazin in a long time ago in Parliament, and some actually quite well-known Labour MPs came up to me and said, sorry Jeremy, I've been looking on the map, where is Kurdistan? I had to point out a little bit of history to them. Do they now understand things a bit better? Yes, I think they do. Do all Kurdish people think the same? No, because they've come from different traditions. They've been brought up under different national governments, and there is obviously the potential for all kinds of disunity because of the way in which the Kurdish people were divided up in 1923. But the language is broadly similar, the cultural values are broadly similar. That sense of identity and unity is something that is very important. Are we making progress in the British Parliament? Yeah, I think we are actually. I think that there is a different atmosphere around. I was very opposed to British involvement in the war in Iraq in 2003, not because I was a supporter of Saddam Hussein, absolutely not, but because I didn't want to see any more killing and any more bloodshed. I wanted to see a political solution. I want to see a political solution for the Kurdish people in exactly the same way to save lives. I don't think there's any great majesty in going to war. I think there's great majesty in bringing about a peace, providing it's accompanied by justice. Peace not accompanied by justice merely leads to another war.
Please.
Glad to be here to the Remembrance Days of Ghassemlou, hoping that Kurdish leaders wouldn't experience again the same mistakes they did trusting a barbaric regime like Iran. We are very glad that there is a news that there is a Kurdish National Congress going to take place in Erbil. And I know that Kurdish Democratic Party, which you are representing here, is part of those organizers. Could you say that if there is any reaction, any obstacles have you noticed from Iran and Turkey and Syria, the neighboring countries?
We have here some representative of the Iraqi Kurds who could as well answer to these questions, but so far as we are concerned, we are not in direct touch with the Iranian regime now in order to know, but it's clear that the Iranian regime now, you know, these days they are very active. They are lobbying in order to prevent the progresses of Iraqi Kurds in the direction of independence. So they make their voice heard in this direction. And last summer, of course, they were not happy about the perspective of the holding of the Kurdish National Congress in Erbil. But according to me, they were not, I don't know what did they say to Iraqi Kurds officials. Maybe our representative from Iraqi Kurdistan can comment on that. But I think what is certain is that Iranian regime last summer did not express its hostility towards the holding of this Congress, but most probably they tried to influence the agenda and the content and the objectives and the purpose of this Congress. So unfortunately, it did not take place in order for us to see what could happen then. But it's obvious that they will always try. Even their hostility will not, they will not express their hostility as they did in the mid-90s, for example, because this time has gone, where they used to make their hostility towards new developments in Iraqi Kurdistan in a very brutal manner. It's more in shadow. They want to pressure Iraqi Kurds. These days, they tried many times to close the borders in order to put pressure on our friends and brothers in Iraqi Kurdistan. So this is what I can say concerning what happened last summer. And they will continue their efforts in this sense. It's about soft hostility, I think.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Kusura bakma, ben Türkçe söyleyeyim. İngilizce çevirirsiniz.
Tamam.
Sorumu ben Fransız diplomata sormak istiyorum.
Okay.
Öncelikle de şunu söylemek istiyorum. Yani ben kişi olarak ilk sefer Kürdistan'ın 4 parçasında ki bir araya gelmiş insanlarla birlikte böyle bir toplantı yaparız. Yani heyecanlandım. Çünkü Doğu Kürdistan Mezopotamya halkları için önemli bir noktada. Öncelikle onu da açıklamak için teşekkür ediyorum. Toplantının düzenlenmesi. Diplomatın anlattıklarını anladığım Kürdistan için şimdi camların açılmasının zamanı olduğunu söyledi. Ben anladım. O kadar. Birinci Dünya Savaşı'nda Kürtlere kapatılan camlar, 4'e bölünen camlar, şimdi açılabilmesinin imkanı var mı? Bir cam olarak mı açılacak? Yoksa ayrıca 4 cam olarak?
Teşekkürler. The gentleman has highlighted that it's the first time that he is joining an event that has been organized with reference to all 4 parts of Kurdistan, and his question is to Monsieur Tissot. He says that you mentioned that the windows to the Kurds are now open, and his question is, are those windows open? How are they open? Are they just open? Is only one window open, or is it like, how can the international committee maybe use those new possibilities and opportunities with, in the region? If I translate it right, I don't know.
Bon, c'est la première fois qu'il participe à une réunion qui comprend tous les Kurdes, et il veut savoir, tu as dit qu'il y a de nouvelles fenêtres. Est-ce qu'il y a plusieurs fenêtres? Est-ce que les fenêtres sont ouvertes sur toutes les Kurdes? Et qu'est-ce que peut faire la communauté internationale par rapport à ça? Je veux dire la France.
Ce que je souhaite dire d'abord, c'est que je parle ici en mon nom.
First of all, I would like to underline the fact that here I speak personally. I don't represent my country officially.
j'ai toujours pensé que les Kurdes ne devaient pas attendre quoi que ce soit de la communauté internationale.
I always thought that Kurds should not be expecting anything from the outside world or the international community.
Aujourd'hui, on constate qu'au Kurdistan d'Irak, il y a une fenêtre ouverte.
Today what we can witness in Iraqi Kurdistan is that there is an open window.
Les Kurdes d'Irak et les différents partis doivent profiter de cette occasion.
So Iraqi Kurds of course should take advantage of this new opportunity.
Et ce sont eux qui créeront le futur.
And the future of Iraqi Kurds depends on themselves.
Je constate qu'en Turquie, il y a une fenêtre ouverte.
In Turkey as well there is an open window now.
Les Kurdes de Turquie doivent faire ce qu'ils pensent devoir faire avec le gouvernement d'Ankara.
I think Kurds from Turkey are on the right way and they should continue the process that they started with the Turkish government.
I don't know if they are on the right way.
They have to continue what they started.
What they want. In Iran and in Syria, it's really difficult. I see in Syria, for the Kurdish people, it's really confused. But the international community does not know who is Kurd in Syria. Sometimes you speak about 15 or 16 Kurdish party. Sometimes you speak PYD. What is PYD? You know, international community does not know some details. And it's really difficult. And the Kurds of Syria have to define their future, the present and the future. In Iran, really it's difficult because there is not a window. But at least they can be unified. You know, this window is closed currently. But I am sorry, I can't. It's okay?
By that note, I would like to ask a question to the panelists, maybe to Mr. Coburn. How, with regards to the transnational threat that is being posed by ISIS, how would you advise or recommend, or how would you recommend the Kurds or maybe the international community even to act in order to support the Kurdish struggle, or to even the whole region?
I think you have to try and assess where the support for ISIS comes from, and I'm very concerned about the apparently unlimited supply of money that ISIL forces has in the region, and their supply of weapons, and who's behind that. And I think that's going to be one of the areas that should be looked at. Secondly, surely it's an assertion of Kurdish rights and identity, which is what is already happening there. And so what the ordinary people in Iraq feel, from me, is very hard to tell, because they're stuck between invading forces in the past that have behaved in part a totally appalling way, particularly Americans in Fallujah, at the same time as they've now got the ISIS forces invading that are behaving in an equally appalling way. So surely there has to be an assertion somewhere along the line of a political solution that respects human rights rather than just relies solely on military power. And what we now have is essentially American-backed military power of the Iraqi forces against possibly Saudi Arabian-backed forces from the ISIS forces in the region. It's a very, very dangerous situation. I'm not pretending it's anything other than that.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I would like to thank you all for being present here and also for your kindness toward the Kurdish people and for traveling here and being present here. As Mr. Tissot said about Dr. Hassan, he was as a teacher to all of us and he still really reminds that for all of us. An important matter that is significant here is about the Britain's rule throughout the Kurdish history. My question would be, and my question is, what is the Britain's rule in today's for Kurdish state, and hasn't the time came that Kurdish matter be put into priority and not come after the Iran's atomic problem, and the peace be upon Hassan soul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Corbyn quickly left, but he will be back. Maybe you or maybe Ms. Perry, would you like to answer the question? Okay.
No, the question is directed to Mr. It's about it. You cannot deny the historical role of, it's a negative role, unfortunately, of Great Britain in the fate of Kurds, all of us, all Kurds, especially in the aftermath of World War I. But I think it's better to leave this question to him to answer. What role can Great Britain, what role can they play?
Okay. We keep that question to Mr. Corbyn then. Next question, please. Yes, please.
Thank you for organizing this event. I'm very pleased to see so many familiar faces, especially from all parts of Kurdistan, Bakur. I was looking for these faces earlier on. There was a demonstration for Rojava. Sadly, there was only 15 of them. There's so many unanswered questions, so I'm not going to ask a question, just one small comment. I think the Democratic Party of Iran, they missed a great opportunity today to lay the nicest bouquet in memory of the flower. What I'm trying to say, sorry, I'm emotional. The Democratic Party of Iran should have used the 21st anniversary of assassination of this great leader by announcing the unification. And I hope, like the gentleman, the ex-consul said, that next year there will be one event, and that event will be the unification. This is the least things we should do in memory of this. It's a very difficult time, especially in Kobani and Rojava. I think we should all, Bakur, we all should be united under one banner, which is Kurdistan. Thank you very much.
If you would like to comment on
Yeah.
this,
Just for the previous question, while Mr. Corbyn was giving his speech, delivering his speech, I said to Mr. Tissot that British seem to be less conservative than French government or French people. But we will be waiting for him to confirm my impression. About this comment, I want to this is reality. I don't want to give you false hope, but since 1 year, negotiations and talks, we are engaged in talks with the other faction of the historic KDPI, and just last Tuesday, because I am a member of the delegation designated by my party to have those talks with them. So unfortunately, still we are facing some obstacles about the basis and how to overcome our differences. But we made many progresses. It takes time. If you want a real reunification, if you want this split never repeat again and avoid those problems in the future, and to rebuild a KDPI who could face the new scenarios in our region, we are also of course, those talks must not take too much time, but we must be patient, and in any case, I can assure you that the situation between us is very good, and Dr. Tissot was the first mediator between us, and I thank him for this.
It was so difficult.
And it was already not easy, but we made a long way already, and the minimum is that we are coordinating our policies to face the new situations and the coming developments.
Yes, please. One more question.
İnşallah var buna kurdan ve Rabık and the same do fikrin dostiki kurdan the bejiki un hayal mülkiye hacene ve çenekin bunu kan beşken bu emci bir dizanı ama salan edici bejik ama her dağıtılın ama kes gavna bejik o her cari devletik müdahale dikeri bu konferansı her car şunda davet bu proje başı da konferansa kurdi ban hakkının konferansa kurdi geri vatanı çekirin bu da zafer aldı. Kemasi yekidi be beraber be yani haydi kemasiyan ne kadar ama beşerojeda el division disipline salvegara şahadata doktor Ghassemlou de sabda gidim vardı bula ev bangajı jüvedi bu bırakın bu konferansa gem bahar bu bangi bu kanun bakın beşerojeda planı gibi proje gibi insan antone I've got a question actually for Dr. Tissot. Forgive me if I pronounce your name. You said you're student of Dr. Ghassemlou. Dr. Ghassemlou was your master.
Yes.
I believe that. Thank you very much. Dr. Ghassemlou assassinated in Europe, in Austria. Assassination against Kurdish politicians in Europe hasn't stopped after that. As you know, the Kurdish political woman assassinated in Paris.
Yeah.
They were daughter, sister of Ghassemlou, daughter of Ghassemlou, and granddaughter of Ghassemlou. As a student of Ghassemlou, as a friend of the Kurds, have you done anything? Did you unify the Kurds in your mind? Personally. Did you do that, or have you done anything for the Kurdish police?
Of course, thank you very much. You know, I was so sad. I was in Paris when Rue Lafayette sat to after Choix. Rue Lafayette. These ladies were killed by. Okay? And I don't know, I am not from the French police, I am not, I am so sorry for this kind. I know, what I know, it's police make an investigation, at first time it was terrible. I did not know how it's possible to kill 3 ladies in the center of Paris without any consequences. It was free, you know, to kill. It was okay, but you know, the French police is not the murder. I think they are from Turkey or other place. But what I know, it's French police. Have the phone number of this driver of this ladies, and now. And I know the French police asked to Turkish government, French justice, asked to Turkish government, the person who has his phone number, but until now, we don't have any answer from Turkish government. And ashamed, of course. In Vienna, the Austrian government let the terrorists went. In Germany, the German government make a trial and investigation, etc., and condemn the terrorists. In France, I am so sorry, but until now there is no result. And until now there is no result. I remember Janabi Sarov Massoud Barzani went to France, and you remember in 1996, no, I don't know when, the representative of KDP was assassinated in Paris. It was before 2000. And until now we have nothing. We don't know who is the killer. Human rights in France. Yes, Dr. Ghassemlou was my Mamo star.
Thank you. Mr. Corbyn, there was, in your absence, there was a question directed to you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the gentleman can briefly sum up again.
My question is regarding the significant role of British political standing towards the situation, the current situation for Kurdish population, and also would like to know your point of view toward the Kurdistan's future and what is your role in today's current affairs.
I've always supported and do the right of people to their own self-determination and their own identity, and that obviously applies to the Kurdish people, which is why I always draw on the history, particularly the deceptions at the end of the First World War by all of the Western powers, actually, without exception, on that. What's the attitude in Britain? The Foreign Office and foreign policy tends to work on the basis of not wanting to upset national frontiers anywhere. And so hence the often quite ludicrous lines on maps all across the Middle East and Africa are usually defended by every Western country because they're all complicit in the drawing of them in the first place. What will happen in the longer run with Kurdish people? Well, you'd probably know better than me, but it seems to me that there has been a significant corner turned over the past 5 years in the coming together of a lot of the Kurdish organisations, hence we're here in this room tonight. Secondly, the international recognition of the Kurdish regional government in Iraq. And thirdly, the way in which Turkish governments are now being forced to recognise Kurdish identity, to some extent Kurdish language. We're not completely there yet. I'm not pretending it's all over, it's not. But there are big changes there. And so I think if we're meeting here in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, one would see at the very least a coming together of Kurdish representation from within all those countries that we've been talking about this evening. And I think the Kurdish identity is something that is going to get stronger, not weaker. And that is in part because of the very good actions that have been taken by so many Kurdish people living in exile in Germany, France, Britain, Belgium, all over Western Europe. And that has had an effect on British politics. There's no question about that. And it's had an effect on parliamentary thinking here. And so having this group coming together tonight of essentially a unity of Kurdish people has got to be a good thing. And I hope that we will also become a strong force and a bastion of rights of young people, old people, disabilities, women, and rights of all minorities within the Kurdish region as a whole, as an example to every other country in the region, where, frankly, the human rights record of pretty well all countries in the region leaves an awful lot to be desired. I hope the Kurdish people, having suffered such abuse of human rights themselves, will instead become an example of what good human rights, good democracy and good justice actually can be as an example to others.
I think we are slowly coming to an end. I would like to take one more question, one final question.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Well, two questions. One is for Socialist International. I was wondering whether Socialist International can play a role in bringing the two sectors of the AEP, because they are very good connections with Socialist International. Perhaps this message can go to my very good friend Iowa, and they could play a role there. A question to the AEP representative. Could you tell us, since the election of Rouhani in Iran, has there been any softening of the attitude toward the Kurds? If not, can Jeremy, as a member of the Parliamentary Human Rights Group, can the British Parliament play a role in that?
Thank you. Ms. Perry, maybe you start with the first question.
Well, the Socialist International has for a long time played a central role in trying to bring the parts together. And our friends here around the table know that they've been participants in numerous meetings. Most recently, the Socialist International has established a committee on the Kurdish question. It was established in the last Congress that was held in South Africa in 2012. And last year we held a meeting in Sulemania, in which we brought together, it was about 24 different political parties, Kurdish parties, from all different countries. From, in the case of Iran, there were multiple Kamala parties, there were several PDP parties, and the message of the Socialist International was one of encouraging of unity, and those efforts will not cease. As our friend has said earlier, it's a process. They're working towards it. It's not easy. We all know it's not easy, but we will never give up. And the Socialist International is always there. And the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iran has a place in the Socialist International. And we will always do whatever is necessary to assist in that process. And this is not unique, I think, to the Iranian party. I think it's a common phenomenon where you have country of origin where there's no political space for maneuver. Parties are fractured, opposition is fractured, and it's not an uncommon situation, but it's one which needs to be faced and needs to be realistic. And especially today, with new opportunities, as Tissot was saying, that are opening up, we need to really take advantage and take decisive steps forward.
concerning the situation or the plight of Kurdish people in Iran under the first year of Mr. Rouhani's mandate, as you probably know, Rouhani, during his electoral campaign, made many promises to Iranian ethnic groups, including Kurds, to improve their situation and to their rights, some sort of their rights to be recognized. Insofar as we were concerned as Iranian KDP, we even welcomed those promises, and we thought that we have to give him a chance and to wait what he can do. But 1 year later, it turned out that the reality is really disappointing. Whether it's because of a lack of belief or because of impediments and obstacles created to Mr. Rouhani by the hardliners within the regime, it's another discussion. But the reality is that 1 year after his election, nothing has changed concerning Iranian Kurds, Iranian nationalities. The very few opening space concerning the cultural rights, cultural activities, NGOs, newspapers, which there are developments, you know, at the center now here in Iran. It's moving. I know there is a change, ongoing change, but it does not exist insofar as Kurdistan is concerned. On the contrary, the security view to the Kurdish question, they continue with this. We even had several cases of executions of political Iranian Kurd political prisoners, and shooting on people on the borders, bombing Iraqi Kurdistan areas from time to time continues, and all the policies of discrimination continue like before. So it is disappointing. It's a fact, but we have to admit that no, the situation has not changed insofar as Kurds are concerned within under the first year. I don't know. We cannot predict what will be happening in the coming years. Personally, I'm not optimistic about that.
Okay. With a not that optimistic final note, we will finish the event.
Realistic, at least.
Kurdish progress.
Kurdish progress.
Yeah, it's a note of optimism.
Yes, I would like to conclude and thank on behalf of Madhut Swara and the Center for Kurdish Progress. I would like to thank our speakers for contributing and joining us today, and also for the audience. It's a great turnout. It's our first event. And if any one of you is interested in our future events and work of the Center for Kurdish Progress, you can leave your email addresses. And also we are going to take some photographs in the end, and everyone is welcome to join us. Thank you very much.
Get everybody to stand here. Get everybody to stand here, yeah. They could all stand behind us here.
Yes. He's going to take one photograph with the speakers on the first, and then
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had a very complicated evening. I was doing 2 meetings at the same time.